Welcome back. Back in the studio today for another edition of Musings from the Mountains from WVSports.com. I am the managing editor, Keenan Cummings.
And I'm the staff writer, Patrick Kotnik.
You know that already if you've watched us before. Thanks again for tuning back in. Some things to talk about. We'll wrap up the NC State game. That's pretty much in the past. What we did learn is dressing up the run game helped. I think West Virginia doing a lot of the things that they did with the motion and some outside runs really opened things up on the inside and got the linebackers, out of place. They stretched them a little bit, were able to effectively run the football. By far their best rushing performance of the season. Kennedy McCoy himself actually had more rushing yards in the game, 66, than West Virginia had in the two games prior, 64. Defensively, I thought they frustrated Matthew McKay. They were able to take some things away. Tackled much better a week after missing 21 or 22 tackles, depending on which person you're listening to. West Virginia got the job done. Pat, any final takeaways you had from that game?
No, other than West Virginia, they responded about as well as they could have, and that's something I mentioned during post-game following the game, was that, for a team that had 3 new starters on the offensive line, for as much adversity as they faced after the Missouri game, for them to come out and take care of business like that, that's encouraging to see. Obviously, there was going to be more competition down the road. Like I said, this Kansas team, I think, will be somewhat of a challenge. I'm not sure. We're still kind of unclear how good this Kansas team really is, but
they're better than BC.
Yeah, definitely. But it's definitely a step in the right direction for Lettie Brown and company.
Yeah, I think the response is not just important for West Virginia winning that football game, but for the trajectory of the season. I think definitely. If West Virginia had not came out and played hard, and you saw lethargic and just not playing very, very passionate football,
it's contagious.
You start to worry about the way that this season is going to turn out. Now West Virginia will go to Kansas with a chance to be 3-1 going into a bye week. In West Virginia, I think before the season, most people would have took 3-1 with the first 4 games. Just with all the turnover and all the questions. Moving forward, we're into Kansas week. We'll preview it on our episode tomorrow, as we do every week, and take your questions. But we'll briefly jump into some of the things we heard today from the coaches. We'll get into a little bit of basketball recruiting at the end, too, as Bob Huggins continues to build that 2020 recruiting class. First thing for me today of importance was health. Mike Brown is going to be available. He missed the game due to an illness against NC State. Josh Sills is still questionable. I think with his shoulder injury, they're still trying to determine if he's going to be able to go. I think if he can play, that changes what they do up front. I think if he does not play, they keep the same 5, at least to start the game. Sean Ryan, another guy that was banged up, he's questionable, trending positively at this stage. Neil said he went through the walkthrough, so I think there's a chance he can play. Obviously, West Virginia needs all hands on deck, or as many as they can get. This isn't your grandfather's Kansas team, I guess. Really surprising results. Kansas had not won a road game against a Power 5 opponent in 11 years. I think it was 2008.
It was like 48 straight.
48 straight. And they not only won at BC, they dominated that football game. Mm-hmm. And that's a BC team that had already beat Virginia Tech. So at least they had one quality win. What can we expect? We'll find out. I think it's interesting, too, that Neil talked about. He didn't necessarily say a timeshare, but Shea Campbell, who's been battling an injury since training camp, really kind of bounced back. He played his most snaps of the season against NC State, was used as a blitzer, was really effective in that role. Vic said he wouldn't be surprised if it's 50-50, with him and Tonkery. They've got to get more out of that position. It has not impacted the game positively enough that they thought it would happen. So I think his play is a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, definitely. And something I want to mention, too, I thought it was an interesting question that was asked regarding, there's been a lot of talk about this young wide receiver group. And we saw Sam James, definitely arguably the player of the game. He was the offensive player of the game for West Virginia. They handle those team awards every week. But he was asked, co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Matt Moore was asked, is he definitely a factor now in the run game? And the answer was yes. That's definitely in the outside of run game. He said when you have a player who can be a factor with some of those speed sweeps, some of those jet sweeps, that forces defenses to spread out. The linebackers will loosen up a little bit, same with the safeties. that spreads defenses out, and then that makes teams kind of respect that more. Then that's when you can attack them with the inside run, inside zone as well.
Yeah, and you get that hammer, Lettie Brown, to close the games out. I think that's going to be his role this year. If West Virginia's winning, he's going to get the rock. He had 35 yards rushing, and 19 of that came after contact. That's pretty impressive. That speaks to what he's able to do. He can break tackles. He's that guy you want to get the football to late to kind of grind out a game. You mentioned the freshman wide receiver. Thought it was interesting today that Neil pretty much pulled the curtain back. Ollie Jennings is going to play. There will be no red shirt. He caught a touchdown against NC State, obviously. Looked very good. Winston Wright, still a question mark. I think there's a chance he could still redshirt. Depends on how he develops. West Virginia will get Tevin Bush back after a suspension last week. He's cleared. He's good to go. Neil said he learned a lesson from that, a violation of team rules, and you pay the price when you don't do those things. Thought that was interesting, too. One other thing I want to get on just with personnel. Martell Pettaway was on a milk carton for the game against NC State. Did not receive a carry. That was sort of by design, not necessarily a doghouse or a discipline issue. Just they were doing a lot of the outside runs, and then, like I said, they went to Lettie Brown late in the game. They didn't do much two-back. That's going to be something that he's going to be in the game plan moving forward. So no panic there with him. I know some people on the blue line had asked a lot about that, so we were able to get some answers for that today. Important to note, this is very important to note in regards to this game. You got to have ESPN Plus, guys. It's a streaming service offered by ESPN. You can get it for $4.99. You're not going to be able to watch the game unless you have it. I know that's not making a lot of people happy, but it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, make sure you sign up if you want. I know a lot of people aren't really too happy about it, but that's the way it is for this coming game. Just one other thing that I want to point out to before you get into some basketball recruiting here. A lot of talk about the offensive line, the run game. Obviously, we know through the first two games, West Virginia's run game was just very non-existent, very poor, only 64 yards. They bounced back this past week. Something I thought was interesting, and it kind of came during post-game with Colton McKivitz. He said that something I thought was very interesting, that after each day last week, the offensive line and running backs got together and they went over details. They went over scheme. They went over the opposing defense. Just to sort out some of those details, and it was kind of in an effort to kind of boast morale, kind of boast the team's chemistry, those two groups' chemistry and their connection as well. And it paid off. They said that was the first time last week that happened. They met each day before practices, before meetings, and talked to Alex Sinkfield today, talked to Lettie Brown today. They said it paid off, and that's something that they hope they continue to do moving forward.
I think that's interesting, too, because obviously West Virginia had a lot of success. Some of that, the center. West Virginia might have a center.
And Matt Moore knocked on wood, too.
Yeah, he knocked on wood, and I think that's telling. West Virginia's gone through 3 guys already, and there's been 3 games this year. So Bryson Mays has stepped into that role. We'll see if he's able to maintain what he did. But with what he did, I think it's opened up some doors for West Virginia and some positional flexibility elsewhere. This is a line now. You were wondering who the 5 were. Now, when Josh Sills gets back, you have maybe 8 guys you can play in a game.
I feel like that's a good problem to have.
That's a great problem.
That's a great problem to have.
That's progress.
Especially considering where they were, in the preseason as well.
Yes. We will get a lot more into Kansas tomorrow, kind of what to look for. We'll answer your questions. But let's talk some basketball recruiting. Bob Huggins continues to be on a roll. Added Kedrian Johnson, junior college player. Like with any junior college player in basketball, don't really get a lot of offers until later. So this is a guy that West Virginia really prioritized. Made him kind of an important piece to this class. Adds length at guard. He's 6'4", about 200, 180, 200, around in there, 200 pounds. I think that he's a guy that West Virginia's going to use in a variety of ways. He averaged 25.6 points per game last year, 3.7 steals. Those were tops. The steal number was tops at the junior college level. He can score at all 3 levels, can create his own shot, score off the bounce, has a pretty nice mid-range game. I think that West Virginia now is getting the pieces that they want here moving forward. It reminds me somewhat of Taz Sherman. I think his splits are pretty similar too with his shooting. So I think it's going to be interesting. West Virginia's really hit the junior college level last year and now this year. I think that this will be probably the only guard in the class. You have those 2 forwards. What happens next, you ask? West Virginia has 3 seniors getting ready to leave at the end of the year. They have 3 commitments now. They're not done recruiting. There's going to be movement somewhere because West Virginia is still targeting a big. I did a big overview on the site breaking down every one of those guys that West Virginia is involved with. I recommend you check that out. But things are rolling. I think Bob Huggins is probably in a very good mood with how things are coming together with this class. He's landed pretty much all of his top targets at this stage. Pretty much every guy, if you would have circled on the list, but there's still one more spot, and West Virginia's looking for a big. There's a couple guys that could take that spot. It's going to be interesting to see who it is.
Yeah, especially after 21 losses last year. I mean, Bob Huggins has definitely put in the work to fix the problem. He keeps saying I want to fix this problem, and so far, I mean, he's putting all the pieces together, and obviously the game still has to be played, but I mean, it's a good start as far as recruiting wise.
Yeah, and that doesn't even count into effect Jalen Bridges, who basically is a 2020 guy that Bob Huggins was able to get in school this year. So a really good class so far. I think there are very little complaints you could have there. Johnson's going to have 2 years left when he graduates, so that'll come here in the next year, obviously, and he'll join the basketball program. But thanks once again. Hope you had fun. We'll be locked and loaded and ready to go for tomorrow. Hope you tune in. Hit subscribe if you're watching this for the first time. We do these regularly. We're up to episode 22 now, the Avon Coburn edition. I can't believe that we're already.
There you go.
We've come so far in such a short period of time. But thank you for tuning in again. This has been another episode of Musings from the Mountains.